What's up, everyone? It's your favorite marketer and podcast host. My name is Prit. I'm the author of Zero to Four Figures, a marketing strategy consultant, and a digital entrepreneur. A few of the roles that I do take on, I'm a podcaster, YouTuber, Etsy shop owner, and a Skillshare teacher as well. All of the links are in the description box below if you'd like to check it out. On this podcast, I shuffle between giving solo podcast episodes and bringing in experts to give you actionable steps on various marketing, business, and mindset strategies to help you grow the business you love. Today, I have one such expert with me, Michael Camarillo. Michael was born in California and raised in Texas, but strives to be a citizen of the world. He holds a dual bachelor's degree from Brown University in Archaeology and Architectural Studies, and is currently pursuing a master's in international relations at Troy University. He has been awarded the James Aldrich Prize for an academic paper published in various periodicals and is currently working on a series of nonfiction travel books and a children's book series as well. Michael loves travel, culture, baseball, and anything involving outdoor activities. His greatest passion is his family, Amanda, Sarah Bell, and Adrian. That's such a beautiful bio. Michael, how are we doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited for this episode. And so basically, Michael, I know that you've just published your book. So we're going to talk about that in this episode as well. And we're going to talk about the inner workings of writing a book. So Michael, why don't we get started with your entrepreneurial journey? How did you start? What made you become a nomad? I know that you are a nomad right now. You know, you love traveling, you're across the world. How did you get to all of that? And how did you become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so that was quite the process. To start off, let me just make it known that I do write fiction books. That's what you're talking about as well. So that bio is typically what's in the back of my book. So the assumption is you already know that I'm writing fiction. That's why it wasn't written in the bio at all. So that's something I'm assuming we'll get into. But in terms of entrepreneurship, I have always, kind of likened myself to Jack Kerouac on the road. I love just ever since I grew up in a small town in Texas, and ever since I graduated high school, I've been on the move. I went to the Northeast, to New England in the United States. I went to school up there. It's a massive cultural difference from what I learned in small town Texas. It was a kind of a rude awakening, seeing different people from different perspectives that weren't in the narrow, world that I had grown up in. And it was actually really jarring at first. But then it started kind of inspiring me and making me wanting to reach out and meet more people. After that, I ended up doing what most college kids do. I tried out everything. I worked sales in San Antonio. I worked sales in California. I was living on a couch in Santa Monica, and I was living with my friends. I was going door to door selling vacuums and doing whatever else there was to do. I ended up maxing out my massive $3,000, credit limit at the time. That was huge for a college kid. I maxed that out to get myself across the country on this journey where I ended up bartering my way to Nantucket, back to Providence, to Worcester, Mass, and then finally to New York. I did a bunch of odd jobs and doing favors and stuff until I finally landed a digital marketing job with a startup in New York City. Again, I was living off of favors and friends' places and whatever else it was. Until I ultimately got kicked out. They're like, we have paying tenants. You have to find somewhere in like 2 days. I found a room on Craigslist in Queens. Probably not what I would recommend my kids to do, but that's what I did. And it was safe. I found some strange but interesting people to live with. And, the rest was history. I ended up working there for a while. I ended up changing that, and I joined the military for about 8 years. I got out of that because I wanted to change the world, and I realized, the military wasn't necessarily the best fit, the best platform for me to do that. And then that led me to here. Now, my wife and I are both in the military, both got out at the same time. We were trying to figure out how we could, change the world and do something that we were passionate about, as well as spend more time with our kids, because that was a big thing in the military. You don't get a lot of time with your kids. So we really wanted to craft our lifestyle in a way that we could do that. We could homeschool them, and we do what's called world schooling. It's experiential learning. But the big thing was family time, finding a way to craft our lifestyle in a way that we could sustain ourselves. We're not big on making a lot of money. We're big on having that experience, having a wealth of experience, and having a full life. So we want to have enough that can just sustain us, but our priority is spending time with our kids and helping them develop and being able to give them that worldly experience. So we ultimately decided to create a travel organization, which has morphed over time. Right now, it's kind of it's called Novel Excursion. It is really like a consulting / content creation program organization where we help families travel with purpose. Our intent is to address behavioral change, help people understand that travel is a way of life, but we can make a difference, as long as we're mindful about how we interact with the world, communities, and the environment. So we help people find volunteer opportunities that are locally sourced, locally run, things that are legitimately within the needs of those communities. We help people find educational opportunities around the world, because we believe if you travel to learn, you're going to have a broader mindset. You're going to want to immerse yourself in different cultures. You're not going to let language barriers, cause that rift that's going to put you in your little bubble. You're going to bridge those gaps and seek for more information. So it's going to make you more approachable and more willing to kind of just immerse yourself in communities. So that's one thing we do. And then another thing I do is write books, and I do a lot of various freelance travel writing. I do pretty much everything. Something that really inspired me was this TED Talk by Emily Wapnick, where she was talking about a term called multi-potentialite. And that was breaking away from the norm of the Industrial Revolution, where everyone had an individual asset to give society, that we were all had one true calling, and we all fit the mold on this assembly line of making society better. Instead, there's people like me, and I'm pretty sure like you, I think we've talked about this, where we do a wide array of things. We don't have one true calling. Our thing is doing everything. And that's really what I do. So I do anything from freelance writing to beta reading to travel help to content creation and all the above. So that's really my journey where I am now. And I'm currently sitting here watching my kids play at the playground while I'm doing this interview. So.
Yeah, that's actually a wonderful journey, Michael. I feel like you've done so much in your life. You've accomplished so much, and you're here today. I really like your journey, because it started from, I know that you actually did one class in engineering. I remember you telling me, and then you decided that was not for you.
Yeah.
So, the journey is so beautiful. And I absolutely, Michael and I, we were talking before we came onto this episode, and he said, Prit, I'm going to be at the playground with my kids. Is that going to be okay? And I said, yes, absolutely. I mean, this is why we became entrepreneurs, right? To give us the freedom to have a life of what we want, a life that we want. And this is beautiful. I can hear your kids in the background. It's making me smile, actually. I love that. I wanted to tell the listeners that I genuinely advocate for this, because this is a part of our lives, and we have worked so hard to come here. I know that you have worked so hard to come here, where you're able to attend calls while your kids are playing on the playground, and it's just beautiful. And coming to the fact where you said, about the fact that we do so many things, the saying, a jack of all trades is a master of none, is actually a misconception. Like, people did not actually hear the entire, I guess it was a saying, right? So the entire saying is, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but is still better than a master of one. That's actually the entire saying. And I truly believe that. I think that a lot of people tend to have that mind block saying, oh, no, it's just got to be one thing that I've got to be passionate about. I don't believe that to be true. I think that your calling can be many, many different things. And I think that you have this beautiful, wonderful life where you get to pursue whatever it is that you want, all of it, to be honest. And I love that you advocate for that as well. So Michael, let's talk a little bit about book writing, and let's get into the depths of it. So you write nonfiction, you also write fiction. So, okay, first off, let's talk a little bit about the difference between writing a nonfiction and writing a fiction. What do you think are the pros and cons, disadvantages, advantages of both of them?
So I really wouldn't think that there's pros or cons on either. I mean, I think it's really based on you. What is inside you, what you feel like writing. It's typically your experience, how you see the world, and you'll kind of fall into those, you'll fall into those little camps of what is more comfortable with you. For me, I always wrote. I was an academic. I wrote a lot of, research papers. I've written a lot of nonfiction articles. So writing a nonfiction book was very easy for me. I actually did that as a marketing component of my travel business. I was trying to create something that, I could say, hey, I published this book about this city. So I wrote about San Antonio, which is a city I grew up in that I knew about. So I really got to rely heavily on my experience. And I think the one thing that makes nonfiction difficult, especially if you're writing from it in a sense that you're trying to give yourself kind of this place of authority that this industry, you have to be very factual. You have to do a lot of research. You have to make sure you're not just spouting things that, you don't really know, because you're just gonna make yourself look bad. So you got to be really accurate with what you're doing. So I think that was the one component with nonfiction. With fiction, though, you really, there's a sense of both. You do have to maintain your accuracy. You want to create a believable world, but there's more gray area. So that is, you let your imagination run wild. So typically people who are very methodical, which is weird because I've always been extremely methodical. I wouldn't think, and what I've been told is you would have more trouble writing fiction. Because it requires a little more creativity, kind of a more esoteric mindset that you're, looking at those gray areas. Versus me, I was very, rigid and A plus B equals C. That's how things worked in my brain. But I think I found a good mix, and I think that goes into really being yourself. And I just taught a class recently with this organization called Co-Learn, where I taught about writing. And the big thing for mine was finding your voice, finding your inner voice. And that doesn't really matter what you write, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, but it's being authentic to yourself. And really your experiences and your worldview can impact that positively on both sides, if that answers the question. I think I lost you.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. I just disconnected, like Zoom just switched off.
That's
I don't think we caught the last part though. And I don't know if it even recorded. Hold on, because I usually get that pop-up. Zoom has never done this to me. I don't know. Hold on. Let me just check if it recorded at least.
That's okay.
Okay. Sign in. And then I'll just sign in. Hold on. Oh, don't tell me it didn't record the whole thing. Oh, Zoom has never done this to me. I'm feeling so betrayed right now. But yeah, hold on. Let me just,
Could be the internet issues y'all were having.
Yeah, like I said, like the power was out and then now everything's back, but I don't know what's happening. Maybe the net disconnected for a second, but Zoom just it just switched off. Okay, I don't think we recorded any bit of it. Looks like it. Wait for me. Recordings. Oh, okay, okay. So we got, okay, it's still processing. So we did record. Okay. All right. Oh, it's still recording right now. Okay, okay, fine. Fine. We'll just go back to so maybe if you could talk about the no, wait, you finished nonfiction. We were going to talk about fiction, right? You were talking about fiction,
Yeah.
the esoteric nature of that. That's where I got cut off completely from the moment you mentioned that. So maybe if you could redo that part.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot what I was saying, but I'll do the best I can.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so if you're writing fiction, I feel like from what I've been told from a lot of experts and, I've read, is that writing fiction is harder for people who are really methodical, which is something that I thought would be hard for me because I was very rigid in the way I saw things. I saw things A plus B equals C. But I found that, if you're really authentic to yourself and you are true to your voice, you can bridge those gaps. And I think the reason people shy away from fiction and say, you're either nonfiction or not, is because the esoteric nature of fiction, that it's really fluid. It allows you to kind of bridge the gap between reality and non-reality and find those gray spaces. Yet at the same point, you have to find a way to make it believable and relatable, because even the most far-fetched fictional story, take Fellowship of the Rings, it has all these strange characters. There's going to be components about it with their behavior, the social interactions that have to make sense, or your readers aren't going to want to, it's just not going to be interesting. It's not going to be something that would really draw someone in. So I really think there's not much of a difference in terms of who writes which, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. I think it's really what you are comfortable with.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I actually wrote half of a fiction book when I was in engineering second year, and it was, I wouldn't say more challenging or less challenging. I think it just needs a different approach in your thinking. And, if like you said, it's just a matter of how you look at it, and there needs to be real components, but at the same time, relatability, also your creativity. So I really like that you said there's not really, it's just the direction that you take and it's how you look at it. And I agree with that. I completely agree with that. And so how has your journey been with writing books? Has it been difficult? Has it been a roller coaster ride? Does it flow? Do you have writer's block? How has it been?
So I never really studied to be a writer. I did a bunch of creative writing when I was young. I've always written, but there's so many things that I have to deal with. I know as an entrepreneur, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome, and that's something that I encounter, constantly with writing as well, because, I see a lot of people on TikTok and all these other things talking about these writing devices, and I'm like, I don't really know what those are. I don't know how you're doing. Like, people are talking about things, I'm like, I'm not sure. Am I doing that? Am I not writing correctly? But, I have an editor, and a very, good educated editor. And she gives me a lot of, constructive feedback and tells me when I'm doing things wrong or right. So I have to, trust that, she knows what she's doing and get over that kind of imposter syndrome for myself. But in terms of the journey for writing, like, I think when I first started writing, I was going through a transformative moment in my life, and I was doing a lot of existential searching, and you'll see a lot of those themes within my book. So my personal experience, a lot of trauma, a lot of stuff I went through in my life really comes out in that first book. So Keeper 829, my first fiction novel, is very deep. It takes kind of a dystopian sci-fi genre, yet it kind of falls in the fringe. It's more philosophical in nature than a lot of those books. So people who've read it are like, hey, this is extremely deep, super, like a lot of layers. And that really is reflective of the personal journey I was going through at the time. That came out very easily because I was writing, my personal feelings. I was writing it all by hand. I wrote the first 10 chapters by hand. And yeah, there's tons of pen marks scratched out. I'm keeping that forever. It's awesome. But, once I got to a computer and started typing things, it became a little more difficult because I had that tendency of wanting to search and confirm that how many words should be in a paragraph, how many words should be in a chapter, my genre, is that the right, am I doing the right things? And I've advised a lot of people that I've worked with, to use that information kind of with a grain of salt, that it's a guide, but not necessarily, law, especially in the self-publishing world, because you don't have to worry about the constraints and parameters of a publisher. You just have to worry about your readers and ensure your book fits kind of what they are looking for to a degree, but you have some wiggle room. So once I got over that hump, writing was a little easier. I did find that so I learned about the difference between a plotter and a pantser. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
Okay, so that's a term that's used apparently in a lot of fiction writing. Plotters are those who are very deliberate, and they'll draw out, your storyline, your story arcs, your character arcs, your everything. You have these things called character profiles, which my editor asked me for once, and I was like, I have no idea what that is. But they will have everything planned out all the way through. So it makes you'll typically hit, plotters will have less writer's block, supposedly, because they plan it all out. So they know where they're going for the whole story. Pantsers will essentially just write as you go. And a lot of times you'll hear a lot of authors saying that characters will create the story for them. They'll take on a life of their own and the story just goes. I fall more in the line of pantser in terms of writing, but I still have that deliberate research component where I do plot certain things to make it realistic, because I love historical fiction as well. So like in Keeper 829, I have probably, I think, 10 different chronologies of world history written in tiny little word, like as small as you can possibly see. And I've written all the way back from like 3500 BCE all the way till today, like key events where I was like putting in little things like, this is where my character would have interdicted, this is where things would have changed as I write this alternate history. But yeah, so it's been kind of a roller coaster ride, I guess would be the answer. It's been up and down. I've recently realized, the creative process is the part that I really love and really enjoy. Yet there's a selling and marketing component that isn't the most fun. It's not really what I wanted to do. And I realized, I published my first book in December this last year of 2021. And I've had okay sales, nothing great, nothing sustainable, and I was fine with it. I was just happy with the reviews I was getting. I was happy, with getting my book out there. Then I realized when I talked to someone that is a new writer and she's written 5 books in this year and she's getting all these bestsellers on Amazon, I'm like, how the heck are you doing it? Because I know all my reviews are great. They're saying my book are amazing, but I'm not getting any best selling. And she told me her process. And I was like, wow, you were doing everything I'm doing for my travel business for your book business. And I have not. I have not been putting in the heavy work of promoting myself, of engaging with people on social media, of just constantly, being that repetitive, look at me, here's my book, giving it to people and everything. So I stepped back, this past month. Right now is what's called NaNoWriMo, where everyone's trying to write 50,000 words for this month. I wanted to participate because everyone's doing it. I was like, you know what? I can't. I don't have the time. I need to focus on selling my books. So I decided, I'm going to write every day for this month. I'm not going to write with a word limit. I'm just going to make sure I write to continue that process. But my focus for the end of this calendar year is going out to bookstores, attending events, trying to get more, visibility on my 2 books before I finish the 3rd book. So yeah, that's kind of where I am right now.
I really think that makes sense.
Sorry.
Because, no worries at all. And the thing is about being an author, what I knew a little bit before, I can't really say I knew it much before, but when I started writing my book, I started researching and talking to other authors, and I met about 15 authors while I was doing research for my book. And all of them said that it is going to be a business of its own. And, I didn't realize how powerful or how much that weighed until I became an author myself. You've got to keep talking about your book. You've got to keep putting it out there. And sometimes, I think to myself, well, I've got such a good book out here. It's really going to make a difference. But, the convincing people part really gets to me. It does. But that is all the marketing that it is. And when it comes to a book, if you are out there listening to this podcast and you want to write your own book, I've got to tell you that it is a business of its own, and you have to be able to dedicate that time after it is published. It's not that, you can just wipe your hands off of it. Even whether you are self-published or you go with a publisher, the marketing falls on the author now. It is up to the author to do all of their marketing. So that is just the rule that is going on right now. And, you've got to invest time. And I'm sure Michael also is investing time right now. I know that he keeps putting reels on his Instagram page about his books. And even I also, as you guys would have already known, I keep talking about my book as well. But yeah, it's part of the process. It's part of a very integral part of the book writing. So marketing is super, super important. Other than that, Michael, for people who are starting out, most of my listeners, they're solopreneurs. They are experts in their own fields, and most likely they're looking to write a nonfiction book. So what is your maybe one piece of advice that you wish you knew before you started writing your nonfiction book?
So many. So first off, write about what you know. Don't try and embark into something that you think you should. Rely on your experience. So I was advised to
Michael, sorry, you're cutting off a little bit. You're cutting off a little bit.
Oh no, okay.
And the voice, I think, did it connect to your car Bluetooth?
Yeah, hold on. Let me adjust.
Yeah.
1 second. Sorry about that.
No problem. I'll just edit this out. Don't worry about it.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Good one. Yeah.
Okay, that's better. All right. Yeah, I did have to get in the car. I apologize.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Okay, so I'll just, so the one thing I would say, didn't know at the time because I was lucky to get advised on that, and I kind of did a lot of research, but write about something you know. So don't try and, go down the Google rabbit hole and find, hey, I'm doing this X, Y, or Z job, industry, whatever, I need to write about this. Write about whatever it is that makes you unique and makes you someone that, because really, if you're writing your first book, you want to establish that trust and you want people to get to know you. And it doesn't really matter, that goes across all industries. So I wrote about it. I can legitimately do what I learned about online. So I think that's one big thing I would say. I hope that's what you're looking for.
No, that's actually pretty good advice, because I think that a lot of times, especially me, when I first started writing my book in January of 2021, I stopped writing for a couple of months because I thought I was in over my head. But the truth was, I was trying to emulate other business owners who had written books. And I thought I had to write like them or be like them or talk the things that they talked about. And, after the 6 months of break that I took from writing, I said, you know what, I'm going to just stick to what I'm good at, stick to my journey, stick to what I know. And then I wrote my book and things flowed. So I think it's very easy to get swept up and to feel so pressured, especially when you are starting to write your first book, that, okay, I've got to write a certain way or be a certain kind of person to be able to publish a book. No, frankly, you've just got to, as Michael said, you've just got to work to your strengths, write what you know. You have valuable insight to give to the world. And I think that's important. Don't try to be like someone else or don't be so afraid to put yourself out there. I think that's really valuable, Michael.
Yeah, I do want to say, I think that's what makes your book so amazing. I absolutely love your book, and I want to just sing your praises for a moment because, I read that and I think I was a beta reader for Brit, and I was so grateful to be a part of that journey. The questions I asked her was like, why did you pick 4 figures? Because it doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't sound all that successful. I've seen so many books that are all about the 6, 7 figures, and she talked to me about it. And then I read through the story and I started to understand this is why, and it had so much more of an effect on me and really resonated with me personally because I'm not in a 6-figure position by any means. And I started realizing, hey, yeah, I do need to celebrate those little victories and those small things. And I've really started to integrate that into my livelihood and the advice I give other people. So I think that's a perfect example of you writing, you, not writing what everyone else did. So a lot of people might look at that book and say, hey, why 4 figures isn't a lot, but if they read the back and they dig into it a little bit, they're going to realize, hey, this is more like me than some of those other books. And then one other thing I would say that I didn't do for my nonfiction book, get an editor. I didn't do that for my nonfiction book. I got that for my fiction books, but you need an editor, and that's something that a lot of early young entrepreneurs that don't have the money to pay for an editor, because editing can get very expensive.
Yes.
Go look on Facebook. Look on Facebook, find different groups. There's a lot of opportunities of young editors, new editors who are looking for experience and testimonials, just like all of us in the entrepreneurship world, where we do things for maybe free to get those testimonials. There's editors doing the same thing. So you can get, my editor started her own company. I helped her with it. But when I met her, she was a grad student. She was looking for her first clients, actually put what she learned in school into the professional experience. And I was lucky to find her at that time. So now I've gotten my whole series edited for free. And in exchange, I have given her business advice. I've worked on her website. I've helped her develop her editing company. And now, I didn't have to pay 10 grand for an editor, and I got exceptional help. So there's ways to do it.
Absolutely. I 100% agree that every single person out there who's writing a book, you need to invest in an editor. And whether that is time in finding an editor or actual monetary investment, you've got to get yourself an editor. And let's take a second, thank you so much for your praise on my book. It really means a lot to me, but I do want to point out that, Michael was a beta reader for me, and trust me, the amount of insight that he gave me for my book is what it is today. Because of my beta readers. And I have to thank Michael for that. So let's talk a little bit about beta reading. Let's talk about what it is. And then let's talk a little bit about how a beta reader can actually make the book wonderful or just fit for the audience.
Okay, yeah. So beta reading was something that was a new concept to me. I didn't really understand it at all at first. But basically it's post-editing, so your book is in its second, third, maybe close to final draft, and you send it out to readers who will then give you feedback on specific things. So typically, from what I've seen, there's a big argument whether beta reading should be paid or free. There's a lot of people who will do it for free, but the problem that I found is getting that feedback. So me as an author, when I first approached beta readers, I asked for help. I put it out all over the place and asked, hey, who wants to read this book for free? I'll give you a copy, and I need certain feedback. And I provided questions that I needed help with. So how do my characters relate? How do they interact? Are they believable? It's a storyline. Does it make sense? Things like that. Nothing too what's the word that I'm thinking of? Nothing too systematic, but it's really general. So you don't have to be a writing expert to be a beta reader. You just have to be a reader and be able to pay attention. So that's what I reached out for. And I think I sent out my book to maybe 7 or I got feedback from one. I got exceptional feedback from one. I was super lucky, but from what I've heard from other writers, they have that experience all the time where you send out your book to a whole bunch of people and you never hear anything back. And if you do, it's really iffy, not really helpful feedback. So what I found to people that I would want for me. So I did some research. I found what kind of feedback authors need. I did a bunch of I asked questions and kind of put it out there, like what, I forgot. Market research. That's market research, where I was asking, different authors what they typically need in feedback. And I created this form that has basically specific questions, specific characteristics that I'm going to rate the book on. So I'll rate it on a 1 to 5 scale, and then I will put in comments for each one. And it is stuff that if I got that feedback back, I would definitely be able to, make some major adjustments on my book and make it better. So I provide that format to all my clients. When they come on, I will offer them various things in terms of, I'll offer that whole feedback. It's about 9 pages total when it's all said and done. I offer them, video services where we can talk, because the written word is sometimes, you lose in translation. So I offer a add-on video where you can call me and we spend an hour going over that feedback. I also offer proofreading as a part of my beta reading services. So a lot of beta readers don't do that. But I feel like I want to help writers as best as possible. If I'm looking at your book, why not tell you their spelling errors? Why not give you these track changes? It's so easy to do in Microsoft Word that you can just, I'm giving you another set of eyes. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers, what beta reading is and how I do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's one of the fundamental difference. Like even me, I sent out my book to about 10 people. I got 7 responses back. And out of the 7, 4 of them were, just, yes, the book is good. Overall, I loved it. I liked maybe one or they mentioned which parts they really resonated with. And that was just 1 or 2 parts of my book. And whereas with Michael, because he's a professional beta reader, it was very, very different, because every single sentence of my book was analyzed, and not just in terms of the grammar or whatnot. It's more like, okay, how is the audience going to respond to this particular paragraph? Is it worth putting in there? Is it not worth putting in there? Prit, you should do this. Prit, you should do that. And it was more on advice of the overall structure of my book, not just that, even the intent of my book and the message that it was trying to communicate with the audience. So personally, if you ask me, I do advocate for you to at least have the budget for 1 professional beta reader, because you really, really need it. The other people who are going to be reading your book, one, they're not going to understand your audience just the way a professional beta reader does. Not just that, the people who you will ask as beta readers, most likely they're going to be your friends. They're going to be your family, right? There is going to be a little bit of bias over there. Of course, there's always going to be a little bit, because they know you personally, and they love you and they care for you and all of those things. So that's also going to be there. But with Michael, I knew that he had never met me before, so he was reading my book right off the bat. He did not absolutely know me, and just knowing that someone who did not know me resonated with my book, oh my God, I can't even believe how relieved I was after working with Michael on my book. And not just that, Michael even gives a score for your book, and that itself was an indication for me how my book was going to perform out there. And as an author, I've got to tell you, there's going to be tons and tons of self-doubt, tons and tons and tons of it. And so having a professional beta reader look through your book and give you advice on your book, you definitely feel a lot more confident. So I highly, highly advocate looking at Michael's website, if you are looking for a professional beta reader, he is amazing. I personally vouch for him. And, I was absolutely like, I can't even tell you guys, there's an entire worksheet that Michael fills out to tell you which parts were good, which parts need improvement, and what part was working, what part I could shift a little bit. It was just really, really good, so detailed. And every other paragraph in the Microsoft Word, when I looked at the changes, the comments that you can give on Microsoft Word, he had actually given real-time responses to each paragraph, like, wow, Prit, this was good, or I'm going to be teaching my daughter this. I remember that was one, and that was honestly the cutest comment that I've ever received ever on my book. And then there was another one that I think you maybe need to explain this a little bit better. And just having those comments really made me feel better as an author. And I really have to credit Michael for a huge part in what my book is today. So if you're looking for help, I do recommend Michael's beta reading services. And Michael, if my listeners want to get in contact with you or reach out to you or even find out more about your book, where can they find all of this information?
Yeah, so everything I have is on michaelcamarillobooks.com. I have links to Facebook and all that. You can find me on all the social media at Michael Camarillo Books. If you're interested in any of the other professional services and travel stuff I do, it's at Novel Excursion Travel, like the book Novel, and novelexcursion.com. So everything is all linked. So you'll find kind of both of my worlds kind of blending into each other on both websites. The one thing I did want to mention, I forgot to say, that I also offer with the beta reading services is the review component. And you and I both know how to review on a book.
So important.
I decided, I was like, if you're paying me to beta read and I'm giving you feedback, why not take the time to write you a short little blurb that you can then use on your website? I will go put on Amazon when your book is published, all of that. So that's another thing that comes along with the services I offer.
Yeah, and if you guys check my book, I'm pretty sure you will see Michael's review there of my book as well. It's literally on the first page where I've listed all the reviews. So reviews are super, super important. It's one more thing that you also need to keep in mind. It's part of the marketing process after your book is published. And of course, all of Michael's links are going to be in the description box below. Don't forget to check it out, reach out to him, say hi to him. He's really, really friendly. And then tell him one thing that you liked about this podcast episode. I'm sure he would love to connect with you. Thank you, Michael, for coming on this podcast and sharing your valuable insight, your journey, and your thoughts on writing a book, beta reading. It has been so, so helpful to me and my audience as well. So thank you for coming on the Marketing Nomad Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
And for those of you listening all the way up until here, thank you so much for listening. I will catch you in my next episode. Bye-bye.